Hey, I'm Jared, and this is Ryan with you go by RCAM TV, right?
Yep, Arkham TV. Yep.
Okay, so I've been wanting to get together with Ryan for probably 6, 8 months now, and we finally managed to make it happen. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about, this is kind of just I wanted to get to know you, and I wanted you to get to know me a little bit. And so the core of what I do, the core of my mission, my take on life goes something like this: that politics is downstream of culture, which is something Andrew Breitbart popularized, and we both kind of know that's true.
Yep.
And then culture is downstream of faith, and what that means is that the what we believe, our ideology, determines how we live, which creates the culture,
Yeah.
right? Collectively. Okay, so what that means is that if our politics is broken, which you know I don't know anybody who doesn't think it's broken. There are people, we'll disagree about how it's broken, but people think it's broken,
Oh yeah, it is.
which means the culture is broken, because at this point there's no fixing the politics without fixing the culture. We can win temporary sort of rearguard actions in politics, but we can't win any significant battles for, you talk about pro-life causes or any of the things that are near and dear to our hearts as Christians. It's really difficult to make any real ground until you actually make some ground on the culture, and you can't do that without actually making some ground on faith, on ideology. And we've lost so much ground in those areas, and people are trying to win the political battles, and it isn't going to work. We might win a battle or two here or there, but we've become subject to the enemy pulling us steadily in another direction until we win the ideological battle, the faith battle.
Yeah, and I think too, like with when it comes to the church, I think apathy has a lot to do with the lack of faith and lack of putting faith into action to impact the culture in a meaningful way. And I think right now we're starting to see a little bit of that bubbling up with companies like Ancient Studios, the Daily Wire, them making content to kind of influence the culture in a more wholesome direction than what we've previously seen. But we haven't had really any ground at all in the past, I don't know, 20 years, really.
Well, and I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. No, no argument here. It's pretty sad to me, actually, to see it. But the other thing is, then this is where my focus is. You may have seen a post or two from me on Twitter about the fiction that I'm writing. And so the way I look at this is that myth, meaning the stories that we love or believe in, sit somewhere between faith and culture, and
Hmm.
they point back to the faith, the things that we stand on and believe in, and they point forward to lead the way for the culture. And so this is kind of what Daily Wire is trying to do. They're trying to speak to this myth thing that speaks to all of us, right?
Yeah.
And so my dream, my goal, my vision is that it's to tell the story that needs to be told that isn't being told.
Yeah, I think me and you probably have a little bit more in common than we probably realize because I'm, like I have aspirations and plans to write books and TV show, compelling TV show that marries, faith and fiction in a way that is culturally relevant that people are going to actually watch, and that's not corny and lame because so much Christian film and entertainment is corny, it's lame, it's heavy-handed, and
Yeah.
I think some of the greatest, most influential works of fiction of our time have been pretty subtle. I mean, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien was
Okay,
Christian.
so the
Yeah,
last two great Christian myth makers were Tolkien and Lewis,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's what we're missing. And ever since I was like 12, I've been telling my dad and other people around me, I can do that. I can do that. That's needed. It's necessary. I can do that. And so that's been my sort of, I feel like it's a pull on me or a call on me or something. And I hate to call it a calling because, you get too heavy handed with those things and people go, yeah, okay, uh huh. But genuinely, you talk about putting faith into action. I quit my job a couple of years ago. I'd been working for a family business, cutting big pieces of metal into little pieces of metal. And we made kettle chip fryers. And so I was making parts for kettle chip fryers.
Oh, that's cool.
And I quit my job a couple of years ago because, needed to preserve relationships. It was time for me to leave the family business. And at the time, I'm like, okay, God, now what? Do I do this thing? I've been thinking about writing most of my life. I've been doing some of it, but is it time to do this again? And so I started writing a book. This was 2022, June of 2022 that I quit. I had been working on this book since January, actually, of that year. And that book was Bright Star. Now, there's more backstory than that, but Bright Star came out April of this year by Morgan James Publishing out of New York. They're a traditional publishing company. And so my first novel is out, and the subject of the novel is a boy from our world who's transported to another world, which, that's sort of my homage to Lewis. He's transported to another world, but where Lewis had a direct allegory, what I'm going for is more an echo, where instead of it being a direct representation of Christ, think of it like this. If you or I were transported into another world, we're not Jesus, but we're also not from that world. So we may not be affected by all of the problems that world has. So we may be called to fix a problem there like Jesus did here. And if we did that, what it would look like is it would look like a Christian life lived out. It would look like a life of sacrifice brought to the point of, fixing whatever was the problem in that place. And so that's the story I'm writing. It isn't quite like anything you've ever read before, but it's, this is my heart. This is what I've been drawn to do.
That sounds really exciting, man. I'd love to read it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'd love to read it.
Okay, so and this is actually an announcement too, because I just made this decision today. I'm going to be making the ebooks for everything that I write available to anyone for free if they're willing to join my email list. So, and that goes for as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm writing this stuff, I'm going to just make the ebooks available for free. I want to ask people to support me by buying the physical books, if they're willing to, but I want this to be available to people. So absolutely you can read it. And I'm actually getting ready to do the audiobook for it. I'm all set up to record that. The room I'm in here actually is a sound studio that I just finished a couple of weeks ago. It's finally ready to go. So I'm like, yes, it's time. Need to do this audiobook now.
Sick, man. Yeah, send me the links and I'll buy that.
Absolutely. I will send it to you. Actually, if anybody's interested, e6universe.com is the website, and the links to the books are right there on the front page. The first book is Bright Star, and the second book, which actually just came out Sunday, is From the Void. From the Void is a collection of short stories around the characters from Bright Star, sort of making the universe bigger and, showing you these other characters' lives and where they come from and some of those things, which is, I don't know, I love the story for the story's sake. It isn't just about preaching a message. And actually, that's something I really tell people is, as a writer, I try to do three things and not do one. And the one I try not to do is preach at people. That's something that the mainstream media, they preach their woke gospel constantly in people's face, and people are sick of it. They don't want that. So,
yeah, and it makes everything less appealing, man. It's like
they're
so heavy-handed with the message that you can't enjoy the story, and they just focus on good storytelling.
You know what the first thing I tell people is?
Bubble up, yeah.
The first thing I tell people is you have to tell a good story. That's like the base requirement. You have to tell a good story. It is incredibly important. You must tell a good story. That's like the base requirement for this.
And I think a good story too, at least from the Christian perspective, will embody a lot of the things that the positive messages that you want your reader to have. It'll embody self-sacrifice. It'll embody love. It'll embody persevering over evil. It'll embody all of these things, and I think that's good. But that can't be the focus.
Well, what's interesting, though, is that the storytelling community, such as it is, has fallen in love with these dystopian sort of stories that really don't speak to most people on a base level. It's like everybody wants to tell the gritty story about the anti-hero or something nowadays, when really the what's in the human heart still longs for the story of the hero.
Yeah,
This,
and
which
that's
is,
been
yeah,
abandoned, man. And
yeah,
you have these stories that at the end of it they leave you with a bad taste in your mouth. It's like I don't want that.
that's
I don't
right.
think anybody really wants that. It's just disappointing and nihilistic.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. So that's sort of my passion. That's where my heart is. That's what I have been engaging myself in. So what about you? Tell me a little about yourself.
Yeah, man. So man, I've done a lot of different things. I worked I was a youth pastor for a little bit, pastored a church. I worked in supports
I'm sorry.
housing. Now I'm in cybersecurity. So I've done a bunch of different things, and now I'm focused on cybersecurity and just kind of being a provider for my family. And I make content on the side. That's something I love doing. So I make content on TikTok, Instagram. I did make content on Twitter before they nuked my account, on Rumble, YouTube, and I comment on culture and politics. It's something that I'm really passionate about, something that I enjoy talking about. Politics less so now. I don't enjoy it nearly as much as I used to. I find I like talking about like the weird stories. Like there's a story right now by the New York Post about people not showering. I'll talk about that a story like that. Just these oddball stories I've enjoyed talking about and commenting on. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I was an atheist for most of my life. And,
Ah,
Christ when I was 19 years old. So first person in my family
to
find
know the
Jesus.
Lord.
Yeah,
Praise God,
yeah,
man. That's awesome.
yeah. Pretty cool.
Oh, we all have our histories. I've actually known the Lord since I was very young, but that doesn't stop you from going through a lot of really dark crap.
Yeah,
And I have gone through a lot of really dark crap. And it feels to me like the people who go through the really difficult stuff are often the ones who come through the brightest, who come through with the most to share. So,
yeah.
no, that's, yeah.
I
So,
would
no,
say
awesome.
I went through my midlife crisis when I was 18 years old. So my life was a mess. Then God found me in this mess and completely turned everything around. And everything I've faced pretty much since then has been gravy, man. There's been nothing that's felt so overwhelming that I can't handle. And I really do believe it's because God's hand is on my life.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Amen to that. No, that's, actually, I envy you the contrast a little bit because to me, I don't have that stark contrast to look back at. So I'm glad though. That is awesome, and it is so good to finally talk to you. I kind of thought that we might have this sort of thing going where we were
Yeah.
interested in the same stuff, and so I was hoping maybe we could connect some. So that's awesome. So yeah, no, I love talking about all kinds of things. The way I say the purpose of the show Modern Apocrypha is to talk about all of the content that's outside the Overton window. So
Okay.
so all of the truth that people don't really feel
Hold
is
that thought.
appropriate. Yeah,
Hold on one second. I'm sorry about that, man. Daughter was
that's all
having
right.
bad dreams.
Totally all right, man. I've got 7 kids of my own.
Oh, 7, man. You must be busy.
My wife is a saint.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Kudos to
No,
you, though. That's awesome, man. 7 quivers in your arrow, man.
God's blessed us. He really has. I can't claim any responsibility. When I was young, I didn't actually want to have kids. I thought maybe I would have kids, but it wasn't like something I really wanted. And now that I have kids, there's no way I'd give even one of them back. They're all just absolute blessings.
Yeah, man.
The
Yeah,
the youngest is a month old now.
oh, wow. Yeah, my youngest is 17 months. Maybe 18 months. Yeah, she's a
Awesome.
firecracker, man. But
Yeah.
both my kids are
Yeah, I
great.
have one of those too. she's now 5, and it's interesting and it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
So what were you saying before?
everything that's outside the Overton window. You know what the Overton window is, right?
I've heard the phrase.
Okay,
Describing it is,
the Overton window is what people consider acceptable to talk about.
okay.
And
Yes.
anything that's outside of it, when you start talking about it, most people get up and walk away because
Yeah.
they just stop taking you seriously. So when I say modern Apocrypha is talking about all of the truth that's outside the Overton window, it is not rare for me to talk about things like Nephilim or alien abductions or the second coming of Jesus Christ being billed by the media as an alien invasion, or, you know, just things that most people would go, and to me that's fun. It's interesting. I don't hold any of it too tightly. The only thing that I really hang on to is Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
because that is the core of my life. He is my core. And so anything else outside of that, I can consider it and think about it, and it doesn't bother me to think seriously about concepts that'll bother a lot of people, but at the same time I don't necessarily believe everything. It's like the whole flat earth thing. You take a couple of serious looks at it and you go, this has problems. This seriously has issues. You can't. No.
Yeah.
No. So
the thing about flat Earth that I just think immediately I discount it is I'm just like, there's just no way that many people could go along with that big of a lie. Just so many. Like that's a massive lie. I don't see us having the global cooperation to pull that off.
No, and there are things about it that are so physically wrong, like the physics of it are so wrong that it's fairly easy for you or me to actually disprove it ourselves if we decide we're actually interested in the truth.
Yeah.
But it's also a really good demonstration of how people buy into a lie and make it, they get emotionally attached to the lie and they make it part of their identity, and then you can't get them away from it.
Yeah.
So I have known people who bought into that, and you can't convince them otherwise, because they just discount anything that goes against their narrative. And it's the same thing with people in mainstream culture. It's like the whole jab thing, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Back when that happened, people just weren't willing to accept the truth about it, and it's going to cost a lot of people a lot of lives.
The thing with too, like when I think about flat Earth is I don't believe it, but I understand people being disenfranchised because they're lied to so
Right.
much. Why they would believe something like that?
When all of your institutions
Yeah.
are totally wrecked and totally untrustworthy, how can you blame anybody from saying,
Yeah.
yeah,
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get how they can go down that rabbit hole because everybody's lying to them. So it's like when everybody's lying to you, you start to call into question literally everything. And then I do think there is, you're now entering the point of a danger zone. I think even the Bible actually says not to call everything conspiracy. There's actually a verse that specifically says that, and
yeah,
I think it's true. So you gotta stand on what the Bible says is true, and that's going to be our anchor, getting us through any of the craziness that we see peddled through the mainstream media and our institutions.
150%, man, 150%. Absolutely right. No, and I just, you know what actually I struggle with though is I have a pretty good grounding in the things that are real, and I struggle with getting that across to other people and helping them to find the same kind of grounding. And I think that that's what drew me to this whole myth thing, is that if you can draw people to the right stories, it leads them in a good direction. And actually, I got a quote to share with you here. You'll like this, I think. So this is a quote by a philosopher named Ivan Illich. It's not the story by, is it Tolstoy? It's an actual guy named Ivan Illich. He says, "Neither revolution nor reformation can ultimately change a society. Rather, you must tell a new powerful tale, one so persuasive that it sweeps away the old myths and becomes the preferred story, one so inclusive that it gathers all the bits of our past and our present into a coherent whole, one that even shines some light into the future so that we can take the next step. If you want to change a society, then you have to tell an alternative story."
Yeah, that's profound, man.
It is. Well, and when I started thinking about it, I realized that's actually what Jesus did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He lived an alternative story, and it's the most powerful witness we've had in human history.
And he flipped the world upside down, man.
And it wasn't the actions he took, it was the story of the actions he took that did it. It's a true story, but it's still that true myth, that story people heard of what he did coming down through the ages that flipped everything.
Yeah, and it's still dramatically impacting society and culture, and still has
Well,
the
and we
power
have
to
to,
change and shape people's hearts.
yeah, and we have to tell that story in a way that connects with people now.
Yeah,
That's kind of our mission. At least that's
yeah,
my mission.
yeah. No, it's a good mission, bro. It really is, and I'm excited to check out some of your work, man. Because I do think we need more of that in culture. I do.
Well, I'm
A lot of people now. What do you think of the show The Chosen? It's controversial. A lot of people don't like it because it's not like 100% biblically accurate. I get that, but it is kind of cool to see this story of Jesus told out, even if it's not completely true to the Bible, like something actually good quality being produced. I thought, like, generally, it's pretty good storytelling.
you know, actually the thing that always gets me is the people who are militantly against that show are usually the ones who are working against Christianity from the inside in a lot of ways. And so what I mean by that, now don't get me wrong, I have problems with Mormonism and with the Gnostic belief system behind it. It is very much a mystery religion at base, not a Christian offshoot or anything like that. But when you take the Bible and you tell it to people in a way that they've never heard it before, you're going to draw people to Jesus. And if he's real and acting in the world, and they're interested and they actually say, so are you there? He's going to talk to them. He's going to be real in their lives. And so it's a great way to point to him. And when you find people who take the show The Chosen and they put it up on they put the Bible up on some kind of pedestal to the point where you can't tell the story except exactly perfectly to their specifications, then what you do is you actually kill the reality of the story. Of it drives me crazy. And I find those people to actually be working against Christianity from the inside. And we can actually dig into the doctrine on that if you really want to, because I have problems with people who, well, I don't know. What are you thinking here? I don't want to like drag the conversation.
No, I completely agree with you, man. It's one of my frustrations is that we've been wanting good quality Christian entertainment for a long time. You have people that do it in a way that's engaging, a way that's different, a way that's compelling. Maybe not,
Yep.
again, biblically 100%.
Not
accurate,
perfect. Not perfect. Just say not perfect, because
not perfect. It was engaging, and then you have these people dogpiling on it and attacking it at every turn. It's just like, what are you producing? What are you making? If you're going to complain about it, make something better. But right now, this is the best we got, and it's pretty damn good.
I'm with you. Well, and when we look, the big thing that I keep coming back to in my life, and this is like the touchstone that I always go back to, is you'll know them by their fruit.
Yeah.
Right? So if they're producing good fruit, then it's a good tree. Jesus said a good tree can't bear bad fruit, a bad tree can't bear good fruit. You can tell what kind of tree it is by the fruit it's producing, always. People can disguise the way they look for a while. They can disguise the branches and the leaves and the colors, but they can't disguise the fruit they produce. If they produce rotten fruit or no good fruit, then you can tell they're not a good tree. And to me, it looks like the people who are drawing people to Jesus, our main instruction as Christians is basically to make disciples of the nations, right? That's like the Great Commission. That's what we're supposed to do. And so when you see people who are actively doing that by telling the story of Jesus in a way that is, as you said, new and interesting to people and engaging, and then you see people attacking them for it, that should be an indication to you that the fruit of their lives is not good fruit. And there are plenty of people I know, and I've got one in particular in mind, who actually fall in that category. They attack that show very much, and I can't go with that. I don't agree with it. So, long way of saying, yeah, no, I think that's a good thing. And actually, I'm aiming to do something, what would I say? Not exactly along those lines, because I don't want what I'm doing to be a retelling of scripture. What I want it to be is something closer to what Tolkien did
Yeah.
or Lewis did. I want to create an epic world in which the characters are living a story that points back to reality, that is attached to reality, which means that it's going to be pointing back to Jesus.
Yeah, and I think we're long overdue for stories like that, again, Lewis and
So what are
Tolkien
you
are the
writing
last
one?
greats. I'd love to. I'm not yet. I have ideas. I
Okay,
just got to
well,
get them on
I'm
paper.
mostly just giving you a hard time there. I'm teasing you a little bit, but I am actually, and I've felt like I've had a calling to do it since I was very young, and that could just be me, man. I can't put any claims on God. I can't say God told me to do this. That's not where I'm at, but I have felt driven to do this for a very long time, and so that's where I'm moving to.
Yeah, I wrote the only thing written so far is like a children's book, which I'm working to get published. But man, actually, part of like my story is that I had like this, Saul to Paul conversion,
Yeah.
and one of the very first things got, because I'm at this point where I don't really believe in God, and I'm depressed. I don't really have a purpose, and one of the very first things God tells me is, "I love you, and you're supposed to be a writer." Like that is what I was supposed to do. And it was crazy because in high school I'm taking these writing classes. I loved it. I was taking a science fiction class and reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I'm doing these writing assignments. I remember getting assigned this one story where you have to go off this prompt that this box shows up at your door randomly, and then you just
Yeah.
write from there. And
Yeah.
I'm in high school and I start doing this writing prompt, and I'm like 16 pages in, not realizing at the time that I loved what I was doing, and
Awesome.
it kind of, God had
That's
to sell it
awesome.
up. This is what you enjoy doing, so do it. And
That's awesome.
yeah,
So my similar story is when I was about 12, I started writing a story, and I stopped when I was about 16. I had 250,000 words, which is
wow,
this is this is my first book. This is Bright Star. This is how thick it is. 250,000 words is 5 times this thick.
wow,
Okay? That gives you some idea. And I realized that it was terrible and totally unpublishable and a waste of paper. But it had been a great use of time because it taught me how to write.
hey
So,
man, and it's something. You wrote something, and I think that's, a lot of people don't ever even get to that point, man. They
well, and
start from.
it ended up being the world that Bright Star is written in. It is not Bright Star. Bright Star is a different story. Bright Star is the story after that, but it ended up giving me the world for Bright Star. So that was pretty cool. And actually, you say that about writing. Let me float this idea at you. Let me see what you think. So, as part of what I'm doing, I'm having to sell books because I don't have a name, because I don't have a following yet. I'm having to go anywhere I can to sell books. And if my name is on the book, I can sell it. So what I'm thinking is I ask other people who either are authors or want to be authors to write something, not something real long, but something reasonable in my universe with me, then co-author it with me, then I can use that as an what would you call it, as an entree to sell their stuff as well when I'm doing stuff. And then it also brings the body of work in the Energemetra 6 universe, makes it bigger because there's so much room to do stuff in any universe. It's a set of ideas that can use all kinds of expansion.
That
It's
sounds really
interesting.
cool, man. That sounds dope.
Well, that's what I'm aiming for. So, if anybody who's listening is interested, hit me up, e6universe.com. You can contact me right from there. And this is actually, this is a passion of mine. I would love to do this. This is like the rest of my life. I want to be creating this kind of content, writing stories and helping to bring up stories that people can trust, where you can trust, you can give it to your kids and they don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about what's in it.
That's another big thing, man. Making, you have a lot of these shows and these movies and books, but they're not appropriate for children, man. You
Yeah.
don't want your children touching them with a 10-foot pole, because they'll be corrupted by it. You want, like whatever happened, just good, wholesome storytelling.
Yeah. I'm
You
with
know,
you. I am 100%. And, it's the same for my kids. My oldest is 14. I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old. And I have had to prepare them for the most disgusting garbage because I know they're going to encounter it. I have to tell them, this is what you're going to encounter, and it's disgusting garbage. And I'd rather not have to put it in front of them.
yeah,
I'd rather not have to forearm them, but I know they're going to encounter it, so I have to forearm them. And then they run into this stuff and they'll actually tell us about it because we've prepared them for it. Where when I was young, I was not forearmed and I was not really encouraged to explore too much. So when I did encounter stuff that wasn't great, it was difficult for me to even talk to my parents about it. And so I'm
yeah,
trying to create a different environment for my own kids. You can't protect them, you can only prepare them.
yeah. No, honestly, man, we do a pretty good job at my daughter with kind of shielding her. She's my oldest is 5 from
Yeah.
some inappropriate content, but sometimes it slips in there, and she just woke up, had a bad dream because she couldn't stop thinking of this thing called Huggy Wuggy that her that somebody ended up showing her on their iPad. It's like this creepy little demonic looking thing, and it negatively impacted her, and it's just a shame.
Sure. Well, I mean, it is a shame. And I guess the way I would put it is this, that we have to have, on the one hand, we have to have content that we know is reasonable and safe to put
Hmm.
before our kids,
Yeah.
but we also have to be aware that the world out there is scary. And as they get older, five's a little young, man, but
Yeah.
as they get older, 7, 8, 9,
Yep.
10, when my kids were no older than 10 or 12, one of the neighbor kids started talking about how he was a girl.
Oh man, that's nuts.
One of the it's one of their grandkids started talking about how he's a girl, and my kids had a relationship with this young person before that happened. Okay, so this is an idea that started getting introduced. It was a couple of years ago that this got started. This idea started getting introduced before or after they met this little person. They already had a relationship with him. They played with him on a fairly regular basis, and my son actually told him, no, you're not a girl, you're a guy, and you shouldn't want to be a girl. It isn't good for you. And, I think that the relationship was kind of alienated, but if we hadn't had conversations about that with our kids and about how twisted the world is, they wouldn't have known what to do with that. So
Yep.
as they get older, you can't just protect them. If you do that, you'll actually damage them. You have to
Yep.
prepare them for the stuff that they're going to encounter, because the world is awful and it's getting worse.
Yeah. No, I fully intend to prepare my daughter for everything she's gonna face in this world, man.
Oh,
Try to just help her navigate it the best of my abilities.
man, and that is so tough. It's like, actually, just a couple of days ago, one of the kids who had been a friend to my oldest for a period of time. Backstory: this person came to our house and had dinner and damaged my barbecue grill because he was a destructive little booger. And then he went and got on my uncle's tractor and tried to start it.
Uh,
And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. So we had a talk, and I think I scared him half to death. And a few days ago, he got arrested for stealing. And my son had not associated closely with him for a while because he started to understand what kind of person we were talking about. But this stuff is still, it's just all around us, and you can't protect them. All you can do is help them to navigate it and ask God to help you prepare them the way they need to be prepared, so that you're not pushing them out. Because one of the things that I discovered, and actually maybe this will be helpful to you, I don't know. I grew up in a Christian household, right? One of the things that took most of my friends away from Christianity was that their parents tried to shelter them from the world too much and did not give them an appropriate look at the darkness that was outside. And so all they saw was the hypocrisy and darkness inside what they considered their religious parents' home. And so a lot of them ended up being exactly the kind of people who you don't want your kids around eventually.
Uh, yeah, yeah, it's a balance, man, and you got to do a good job in it. It's like and I think me and my wife are pretty much opposite. I grew up in a non-Christian home, and I was able to do whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had absolute liberty to do whatever I wanted to do, and I did. And the consequences were really bad for me. And my wife, on the other hand, she was, your stereotypical homeschool kid. She was, she sheltered. Really, she was social, but she was sheltered, and she wasn't, allowed to
Yeah.
do a lot. And
Yeah.
thankfully, God kind of preserved her, but it was a little jarring for her. Um,
A
you
little.
know, when
Yeah.
she started dating me,
Oh yeah.
and our worlds kind of collided. But I
Yeah,
think
man.
with having her background and my background, we should be able to hopefully raise
That's
my
good.
daughter in a way that's healthy, where she's not too sheltered,
Well, okay,
but she's not too exposed.
so with Jesus, you've got what you need, man. You don't
Yeah,
you don't you don't have to be afraid of anything. None of
yeah,
us do.
yeah,
But I'm just saying that as a brother, my encouragement is just don't make your goal be to shelter, because
yeah,
when we do that, we end up causing a problem. But do provide a safe area for you,
yeah,
that little one, to grow up in, because they need that so badly, and they
yeah,
need the structure, and they need the rules, and they need they need that I can be a growing child. And then as they get older, they start encountering this stuff, and it's like, okay.
yeah. And hopefully, you train your kids in the way that they should go, and they won't depart from it, man.
That's
That's
right.
my hope. I pray for my daughter every day. I'll
Yeah,
do my best to help her
that's
again
all we
navigate
can
this
do.
world. Yep.
That is all we can do. We do our best, and we trust God to take care of the rest. And that's
Yep.
actually the other
Exactly.
thing, is we have to trust God to take care of the rest, because we got to know we're going to screw up.
Yep.
We all are. We're just
One hundred
human.
percent. Yep.
Oh, yeah, no, kids are, I don't know. Kids are such a blessing. It's like there are two things in life where I have told people, I just can't see a way to explain it or properly describe it to someone who hasn't experienced it. One's getting married, and the other's having kids. It's just, they're not experiences you can really relate. You have to do it if you want to get there. Which
Yeah.
is another funny thing, actually. Total rabbit trail, but have you seen the nonsense going on with people talking about how anybody who has a problem with a politician not having kids has something wrong with them?
I have not seen that.
Well, this is particularly in reference to Kamala Harris. People saying she doesn't have kids, she can't understand what it's like to have kids. And everybody on the left is just totally taking offense to that and getting mad because, well, she has her right to make her choices. And I'm like, yeah, but she doesn't understand what it's like to have kids. You can't understand what it's like to have kids until you are responsible for that little person
Yeah.
for, you know, their life for years at a time. And you go, okay, so wow, it just changes everything about you at some level.
Yeah. When I was younger, before I had my daughters, my buddy had ended up having a couple kids, and I didn't understand at the time like why he couldn't hang out. I'm like, bro, it's not that big of a deal, you know. Like you can come out once in a while, and then I had kids, and I realized like, oh yeah, like they are really demanding like all my time right now. I get it now that I have kids. I didn't understand at the time, but I do now. So yeah, no, I
You know,
totally
one of the things that has been a huge blessing about working from home, doing
yeah.
this writing over the past couple of years, is I do a lot of my work out in the living room. I have my main desktop PC is in the living room, and I sit out there and I do my work. So I'm interacting with my family a lot of the day
That's
because
awesome,
they're
man.
all home. We're homeschooling, and that is just it really is a good thing, because then it does give me time where I can go, okay, I want to go record something with Ryan. And so if I take an hour or so to do that, that isn't that big a deal, because I've spent most of my day with them already.
I think that's how it should be too, man. Actually,
Yeah.
I had to listen to this conversation about fathers going away from the
Yeah.
home to work, and how
Yeah.
it's actually damaging to the family and damaging to child rearing, because
Yeah.
the absence of the father, the children were primarily raised by the mother. There's nothing wrong with that, but having that influence from the father is really important. And if you think back and you look back, you had multiple families living together, growing up doing farm work together. So the father had a lot of input and a lot of influence on his kids. He taught them hard work and values and just all of that, as they did things as a family unit, to take care or tend their farm. And we don't do that anymore. Fathers
Yeah.
are largely outside of the home, and when they're outside of the home, they don't have the same influence they would if they were home 40 hours a week. So I do think that that being home as a family is a really good thing, man.
Actually, what that brings to my mind, you saying that, it leads me off in all kinds of directions. But the main one is, one of the things the enemy has been really successful at in our culture is breaking down the social ties that were standard for so much of history in families. So
Yep.
in families, you would have the dad would be at home. Yeah, he'd go work in the field, but he was not, inaccessible for most of the day. He was there.
Yep.
And the grandpa, the aunts, the uncles, everybody is kind of, you have a family unit that is bigger than just mom and dad and kids.
Yep.
And what we have now as a society is incredibly bankrupted, because we're used to living in totally separate houses in totally separate places, not actually being part of the lives of the people who really are our people. And because of that, we have a couple of things go on. Number one is, you don't actually learn how to deal with people in a healthy way when you don't have those examples being passed on from multiple different sources to you and to your kids as they grow up. And that's something that we in the West, in America especially, have to work toward. We have to give our kids that on purpose.
Yep. I used to scoff at the idea of like multi-generational living. I used to
Really?
be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. When I was young, I was like, yeah, I never want to live with my family in a place. And that finally happened. And now I look back and I think like, you know, we, my wife and I lived with my in-laws. We actually had it pretty good. We had built-in babysitters. I was able to help them out. They were able to help me out. We were saving money. We were all under one roof. It was a good thing. And now that
Yeah.
we're on our own, we realize the kind of error in deviating from that. In hindsight is one of those things that just kind of rocks your world. And I do think overall now it's a good thing to return to that as a people.
I agree 100%. One of the things that I had to decide when I was younger, I'm almost 40. I'm going to be 40 like in almost exactly a year. And so I'm a little older than you, I imagine. But
I'm 34.
so yeah, a little bit. But when I was late 20s, like 29, I had the opportunity. I had to decide whether I wanted to go to live in a bigger city, to have more opportunity to do the things that I wanted to do, or whether I was willing to stay where I was at, which puts me with family, and to create something closer to that multi-generational connection. I still
Yeah.
am not able to do what I would like to there, but there are my parents and an aunt and uncle and another uncle and another set of aunt and uncle who live all fairly close to me here, and they're all very much involved in my kids' lives. And the positive input from that is just, you just cannot overestimate it. It's like, one of them, they're getting older and things are getting harder for them, and I look at the impact they have on my kids' lives, and my kids know that at some point they're going to die, because that's part of life. But you can see just with how much they love them, how much they're going to miss them, how much that impact is there, that it's a real thing, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It genuinely is. And so I'm so happy to have it.
Yeah.
I really am.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That is awesome.
It is. So just by way of agreeing with you, the long form, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good thing, man. And I hope more people start to catch on too. Not just with that, but then you think of like homeschooling, man. That's
Oh, yeah.
that's something that is transformative. So your kids being raised by other kids during the day and strangers who don't care about them, they're raised by families who love them and value them and know them, and can help them navigate through the challenges that they're having.
Yeah. No, and actually, it's interesting. My wife and I were both homeschooled clear through. And so it was more automatic for us to think of homeschooling our kids. The idea of putting them into a public school was sort of a that was a stretch for us. The idea of homeschooling was just sort of, well, of course that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And now, you ever see those comics where they show the picture of the people in like 1990 saying, "Oh, don't homeschool your kids; they'll grow up weird."
Yeah.
And then you see the next comic is "Oh, he thinks he's a cat.
Yeah.
He goes to
Yep.
public school." And I'm like, "Yep,
Now
yep."
that I think about it too, even when I was
Oh,
in public school, I know a weird girl that acted like a cat in school.
yeah,
She didn't identify as one, but I'm sure if she was in modern times, she would have. But she acted like a cat, man. She'd meow and just act weird. I remember a handful of weirdos actually in public school.
well, and that's really, as an adult, what we recognize is that those are people who are pretty damaged. They've got something really screwed up going on because God doesn't make people to be that way. Instead, he makes us to be whole and healthy. And so to turn a kid into something that's twisted that way, you've got something seriously wrong going on in their life. And as a as an adult and as a parent especially, we can see that firsthand how that would work. But man, as a young person, that isn't something that I want my kids to be thinking of as normal or dealing with as being, oh, these are the only people who will be friends with me. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, incredibly strange times. But at the same time, it's like we live in a time where we're going to see important things happen. We get to live through things that matter and to have some import in that, to have some influence on that. And that matters. That's something that we can't discount. My parents used to go, gosh, I feel that they used to feel almost bad for the world that we had to grow up to live in. And I remember as a teenager thinking about it for a while and looking at them and saying, yeah, but the light shines brighter in the darkness. That means it may be dark, but we get to shine brighter in that. And isn't that a privilege?
Yeah.
So for my own kids, that's what I try to help them to see too, is just that in the darkness we have the opportunity to shine brighter and to point to Jesus. And that's, when your society and your culture is a dim twilight where the truth is sort of assumed and nobody really, like it was back in the mid to late 1900s, it was all kind of, they had their difficulties, but it wasn't like the difference between right and wrong in the culture was so starkly evident, and right
Yeah.
was not so much hated as it is today. At least that's my impression.
Yeah, man. We are living in a time that does seem like good is being viewed as evil, and evil is being viewed as good. And I do think it's important that we do teach our kids to stand in contrast to that, and be like a beacon of hope for other people to see, because it's a murky world out there, man.
It
And
is.
there are people, without a paddle they can't see, and we want to be people who ultimately help bring them into the knowledge of the truth and help pull them out of the mud, the muck, and the fog of this world, and have a
Yeah,
genuine encounter with Christ.
absolutely. Hey, that's actually, how long do you want to go? We've been going about 50 minutes here.
We'll probably wrap it up soon, just because my wife is on the way home.
Okay. Well, that's actually a pretty good place to wrap it up.
Okay.
How about you tell people where they can find you, and then I will reciprocate, and we can.
Yeah, sounds good, man. You guys can find me on Instagram, Reds at rcam.tv. You can also find me on YouTube, I think, at rcam.tv, and Rumble at just rcam. Or you could just go to my website, rcam.tv, and it'll take you everywhere.
Rcam.tv. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, it was perfect. I can't believe I got that domain.
No, it's amazing. I love it. And for anybody who's interested, you can find the central hub of the fiction that I'm doing at e6universe.com. So the letter E, the number 6 universe.com is the fiction that I'm doing, and I'm getting ready to bring. I was using a different domain a little while back. It was energemetra6.com, and that's fine, but I'm getting ready to bring even more stuff there. That website is getting better daily right now, and will continue to for a while. And then for the more serious stuff that I'm doing, modernapocrypha.com is the website to go through to for that. So that's sort of my more serious outlet. And then for social media, Jared N. Misho, which you probably won't be able to spell. So go to one of the websites, and that's how you'll get a hold of me. That's the best way to grab it. All right. Awesome. Well, Ryan, it is a genuine pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. I love this conversation, man, and we got a lot in common, so
We
definitely
do.
gonna have to do it
We'll
again.
have to see what we can, put together going forward, because
Yeah,
we ought to do more.
yeah,
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and I guess we'll catch you next time.
yeah. Deuces.